Greetings. In this short video presentation, I will be covering the topic of the Antichrist archetype. In another video, I discussed the Jesus Christ archetype and the symbolic or universal nature of that particular construct or concept. And as the name implies, the Antichrist archetype is essentially the opposite of the Christ archetype. Therefore, it would represent that pattern of consciousness which is seeking separation from the divine source, which is in some way creating destruction rather than supporting creation, which is promoting conflict and war, which is somehow fostering any negative aspect of human existence. Throughout history, there have been many people who have been pointed to as being the Antichrist, but in reality, the Antichrist is just this universal archetype that can be expressed at any time in anyone. We all have that potential within us to go into that negative polarity mode where we're doing things that are harmful or destructive, which are sowing conflict, which are destroying lives or killing people. That's something that not just one particular person is capable of doing or being. Considering the idea of the Christ consciousness, looking at its opposite, the Antichrist consciousness, we see this feeding of the ego, this desire to feed into that separate self, the self which seeks to aggrandize itself, to feed its own egoic nature at the expense of others. So it may be in the sense of acquiring power or control, of accumulating material wealth or status. All those things that we may see people doing in the world around us that we look at as egotistical or materialistic, those could be aspects of that type of Antichrist consciousness, and therefore anyone at any time who is exhibiting those qualities is connecting to that Antichrist type of archetype. One reason that there has been focus throughout different periods of history on this idea that a particular person is the single or particular Antichrist is a result of that term being used in Christian theology. However, that theology is in a sense a misunderstanding or misinterpretation of traditions or ideas that predated the Christian era, where there would be someone who would archetypally be identified with this consciousness of seeking unification with the divine, with self-mastery, with self-actualization, spiritual mastery, etc. This idea of our spiritual development and reunification with the divine is one that's been found throughout the world in many different cultures. And in all these different traditions, there might be a particular person or character who is used to illustrate this idea, this metaphysical archetype. In the early Christian tradition, the Jesus Christ character was the one who was a representation of that archetype. In the Buddhist tradition, Buddha would be representing that archetype. in Hindu tradition, Krishna could represent that archetype. And we find some similar characters in other parts of the world, in other religious and spiritual traditions. Similarly, there can be an opposite character, a character that people in the Christian tradition have labeled the devil or Satan, who represents just the opponent of that archetype that's seeking to be in unity and oneness with the Creator. So the archetype of promoting separation, of rebelling from that divine source. And this is something that can be activated within anyone once again. It's not just one particular person, not one leader of that negative polarity. Therefore, for all the people out there who are looking through different scriptures and writings and examining different personalities in the public sphere, if you're trying to identify someone as the Antichrist, you're running what might be called a fool's errand, something that's rather pointless. It's most important for each of us to work on our own spiritual development rather than to be looking to label someone outside of ourselves as the savior or the destroyer. It's helpful to perhaps observe how these archetypes are expressed in other people, but that's to help us understand them in ourselves, to understand these different aspects of life, these different qualities and characteristics that appear in ourselves and the world around us. For those that would like to explore these topics further, you can get in touch with me through my website at www.phinsights.com. That's PHINSIGHTS.com. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Jedi Holistic Healing. You will find information there about different spiritual and holistic healing events that I facilitate here in Miami, Florida, and also many different writings and articles that I post to help us explore different ideas pertaining to our own personal healing and development and to understanding the world that we perceive around us. I appreciate you taking your time to view this video, and I would like to wish everyone a good day. Namaste.